Good afternoon, everyone. I know it has been quite some time. Welcome back to the channel you probably thought didn't exist anymore. But I had something that I've been getting into that I really wanted to kind of jump in and talk about here. So, I've been a big sword fan most of my life, and as I'm sure a lot of you are. But all I ever had when I was younger were cheap wall hangers. And I had a bunch of them, but I eventually ended up giving them away because I knew they couldn't cut, they couldn't hold up to any kind of practice or abuse. So I gave them away. And a few years went by, got into pocket knives a lot more, and finally decided to start getting back into swords. But I wanted to go ahead and start getting into real ones. And through a lot of YouTube research and looking, I came across Romance of Men. I had never heard of them. I believe thanks to the very tight-knit sword community. I heard both Tyrant, Shadiversity, Emblem Arms, another great one, and they were all talking about the Dragonwhisper longsword. And I had been on the fence about buying one for probably about a month or two. And then they announced the version 2. I'm sorry, we've just got kind of a static hovering shot here. I just got off work. My wife and I moved recently, so we haven't really had time to set up a whole lot yet. So bear with the amateur production hour here. But anyway, they had announced the version 2, which was going to be about $40 more, and they had made some changes. So if we come down here, on the V1, it didn't have a fishtail pommel. It was a send stopper pommel, which honestly I prefer, but the other improvements that they did to this model, I think really kind of outweigh just having the send stopper pommel. So on this version, the V2, we have a fishtail pommel. We've got the same kind of, it looks white on here, but it's kind of like a light silver wire wrap. Some little brass studs there. I think that kind of aids in holding the wire wrap in at the bottom. Kind of a dark blue patterned leather. And then here's where another one of the changes is. So on the V1, the crossguard did not have these little gold accents. They were just kind of empty slats. So that was nice that they added that. And then the blade is kind of where one of the major changes came in. So on the V1, the fuller running down the middle here went all the way to like roughly here. And while the sword was very good at cutting from everything I saw, it was just a little bit too floppy. And also, speaking of that, Matthew Jensen just put up a video showing how incredibly flexible his was, almost to the point where he couldn't use it. So I was really kind of glad at that point that I had ordered the V2. Aesthetically, one of the big changes is everything. So the crossguard, the fishtail pommel, the shape down here onto the end of the scabbard, and up at the throat are just mirror polished, very, very nicely done accents on here. And that just kind of gave it a little bit more of a regal look. As far as the scabbard goes, it is a wood core scabbard. I believe it's pine, but don't quote me. I like that the throat up here, the metal is actually further back than the wood, which means it's going to be a lot harder for you to scuff up your blade and dull your edge when you're sheathing the blade. It can still happen if you put it in at a bad angle. I almost did that once, but I figured it out. It's got some little, I'm assuming, brass accents with what I'm assuming is like faux turquoise in the middle, and it's got kind of a rudimentary belt attachment system here. It feels like pretty thin leather, but I think it would hold up for a while. They went ahead, just like they did on the V1, and kind of mirrored the same wire wrap that's on the bottom half of the hilt. They could have, in my opinion, done a bit of a better job with the wire wrap, and I've seen this even in like their website examples. This is not even, on the V1 or maybe the V2. I'm not sure, because don't quote me on this, but I think this might be the first review of the V2 Dragonwhisper going up on YouTube. Kind of hope so. That'd be fun. So at that point, I would almost have preferred they just left it off, but the fact that they considered, adding some accents to, tie the sword and the scabbard together, that's pretty cool, and that's something I could theoretically fix. The stitching is nice. It's a little soft. I can't really move it, and I'm not anticipating anything being a problem on the scabbard. As far as the hilt of the sword itself, the stitching along the edge here, on mine at least, is very tight. Like, I can't shift it. It's quite nice. The other thing that I noticed is how nimble and easy this sword is to move. Kind of ignore the background stuff. Like I said, I don't have my room set up for filming right now. According to Romanceofmen's website, this sword is, I think it was 47¼ inches overall length. And they say the point of balance is about, I can't pull it up while I'm recording on my phone. I want to say they said it's just a hair over 3½ inches from the cross guard. I don't know if it's that close. I can't do it because I don't have a way to brace or set down my phone, so I would need both hands for this. But when I checked, I want to say the point of balance is like out here. I would guess more at about 4 inches, maybe 4½. But that being said, you don't notice it. You don't notice it at all. One thing I can't tell you is the weight, because my scale is still packed, which sucks. And I know on the V1, a lot of reviewers have talked about this, so, it's not just me saying it. But there were some pretty wild variances in overall weights of the sword compared to what was advertised on the website. And if you watch Matthew Jensen's video on the V1, which I strongly recommend you do, it's a really good video. His was one of the lightest that I've heard of. I want to say it came in like 8 ounces below the advertised weight, which is great for it being light and maneuverable, but not so hot with the flex on the blade. And that is where this one is phenomenal. So if I try to flex this, I get a little bit, and it's right about a little more than the last third of the blade. So that's great. This isn't going to be a full review. I'll talk about more later, but I just wanted to kind of help raise awareness for a company that's putting out some really, really good products at reasonable prices. Spoiler alert, if I decide to review this one, up here I have their Fukyo katana. And this thing is razor sharp, incredibly well built, and is a really good value. It's my favorite katana right now. I actually changed a few things on it, so I would definitely make note in the review that I have altered this a bit. But it's just phenomenal. It was great out of the box too. But anyway, back to this guy. So I can zoom out a bit. Ignore my slippered feet. As I've not really had a chance to cut with it yet, I can't say how it performs, although I'm assuming it's going to perform great. One thing I do have to note, and it's one of my only complaints, the sharpness on this. Now, I don't know if I've just been spoiled by their katanas or not, but the edge on this guy, while it's sharp, it didn't come incredibly sharp. I tried to cut a couple pieces of paper with it just to, kind of do a slicing test. And depending on what part of the blade I got, it would either cut through pretty cleanly, or it would just absolutely make a jagged edge or just rip the page. So that's something, at least on mine, the sharpening isn't incredibly consistent, or it doesn't have like a hyper keen edge. That being said, water bottles, plastic jugs, tatami mats even, it's going to work great for that. The edge on that is perfectly acceptable for backyard cutting. The more I'm talking, the more I'm realizing I think I've just kind of been spoiled by by my Fukyo katana, which just absolute killer buy. Get it if you can, if you're into katanas at all. But I'll give you one last overall look here. And then I'll see if I can step out in the backyard, and I don't have anything to cut right now, but I can show you how it moves. It's actually really good. So sticker price on this guy is $339. It's $40 more than the V1, which is still available. And really it's just going to come down to what you like aesthetically, I think. This one is much more highly polished. It looks a little more refined. And with the reduction of the fuller to give the end of the blade a little bit more mass, I think that's definitely going to help structural rigidity, durability. Blade's not going to flex as much when you swing it, and, you know, spring steel, very springy. So that's cool. And like I said, just killer job on the finish on this guy. But if you don't like fishtail pommels, which I get because the scent stopper pommel on the V1 is definitely more comfortable, that might help you make the choice. But just be aware that there's been a lot of variability on the V1s, which they have addressed, and they might have fixed it by now for all I know. Given the quality of the two swords I have from them so far, I would absolutely give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's see here. What else? Let me give you a good long shot of the whole thing up close while I rack my brain for anything else to talk about here. Okay, so you can see the blade looks nice and clean and shiny right now, except for a couple spots that I missed when I was wiping it down. There's something that came on the blade that is now in the scabbard. I'm going to assume it's some kind of like blade oil, or maybe even like a shipping protectant, that every time I sheath the sword, it comes back out and it leaves like these two kind of gooey trails running down the outer edges of the fuller. It's not a big deal to wipe off, but it's not like wiping off oil. It's almost a little gummy. So I either have to take like isopropyl to wipe it down to just get that off, and then put some sort of protectant back on it. But what I use for all my firearms is usually what I use for my blades. It's a cleanse oil blend, which is really, really phenomenal stuff for corrosion resistance and protecting both firearms and blades. So I do like that stuff. But even that and like a microfiber rag won't wipe that stuff off easily because it's so kind of thick and viscous. Rubbing alcohol, especially the higher stuff like the 91 or 99%, that'll take it right off. But I hang it on the wall out of the scabbard, so it's not a big deal until I go to put it away. But those are the only tiny, tiny little nitpicks. And for a budget range sword, there's really not a whole lot more I could have asked for with this. So let me go ahead and cut this off. We'll go outside and I'll just kind of show you how it moves. Once I get everything set back up, I'm going to do a longer review on this. I'm going to do some cutting tests, you know, thoughts on what I think after I've used it. So this is just going to be kind of an initial overview. So hang on, guys, and I'll be right back with you. All right, Joe, so hopefully you can still hear me. If not, it doesn't matter. You can see what I'm doing here. So for perspective, I am 6'4", and this kind of will give you an idea of length. But in two hands, this thing, it moves like an absolute dream. And it sings. That's my favorite part about this guy. But even in one hand, maneuvering it's not hard. I'm blown away by the balance on this guy. But it'd be very easy to practice with this thing for quite some time and not get tired. It's a beautiful sword. So hopefully, as kind of a general overview, that helps you guys out. You can make a choice. Personally, I love it. Thanks, guys. Actually, never mind. You thought we were done, but it is I, Dio. So I made a quick little improv cutting stand over here with my ash bucket and an end table. So we'll see how this goes. But I figured I should at least try something here on camera. Now, bear in mind, I have no actual background in like HEMA or anything like that, so my form's going to be terrible. I did a little bit of kendo back in the day, used some Japanese swordsmanship, but we'll see how this goes. Make sure I don't hit all these tree branches. So, a little jagged on the cut, but it made it through just fine. I felt nothing on that. That actually makes me a little bit happy. I've got one more bottle. Let's give that guy a shot. I'll try the other edge, see if that makes a difference. Feels weird having the stitching on this side, but let's check it out. Not so much, I hit the stand. Did cut it a little bit. There. I take it back. This thing cuts great. I cannot imagine if this had an even keener edge on it, how this would just blow through everything. Thanks for not clicking off yet, guys, until you saw that. I appreciate all of you.